Thank you for being here on a Monday morning, ready to network and share with your colleagues the work that you do in teaching and learning, and ready to take those back, as Daniel mentioned, to your day-to-day jobs. Just really quickly, by show of hands, can I see how many of you are not from JMU? That is fantastic. We're so glad to have you here. We're really glad to be working with our community members and partners on advancing things that associate with technology and the use of technology in teaching and learning. I also want to take just a moment to recognize the members of the planning committee for this. So if I could get you to either stand or raise your hands, and you already have Daniel. So thank you very much again for all the work that you've done. Please give them a round of applause. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Peter Doolittle is currently the director of the School of Education and professor of educational psychology at Virginia Tech. His academic background includes 30 years of teaching undergraduate and graduate students using traditional, blended, and online formats. He has published more than 50 peer-reviewed articles and chapters, provided over 100 national and international keynote addresses, including a highly viewed TED Talk, and has been awarded in excess of $2 million in external funding. His current research focuses include investigation of the impact of working memory capacity on student learning in multimedia digital learning environments. Today we welcome Peter as he encourages us to consider the impact of learning and teaching in technology-rich learning environments on deep learning, working memory, pedagogy, assessment, and student experience. Please give him a round of applause.
Thanks. All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. How are things going so far? Good? Remember those dogs in the back of the window? All right. You just don't see that anymore as you drive down the highway. You see real dogs in the back of the windows now. My name is Peter Doolittle, which makes me Dr. Doolittle. Yeah, it's like the easiest joke to start with. So what we're here to do is to talk about teaching, learning, technology, and a quick indication of the title. I tend to talk about teaching and learning and technology and instructional design and instructional assessments, instructional strategies and all that. And to be honest, to teach well, you need to somehow figure out how to get those all in the same classroom at the same time. And as you start to leave pieces out, things kind of wander off. And so I finally thought, and this is the first time I've done this, well, how do we integrate everything? Because typically I'll talk about one of those pieces. And so I'm going to throw a lot at you really fast and see how this goes, talking about how do we get all of these pieces together in a meaningful way. The second half after the colon, because you know, if you're a scholar, you got to have a colon. You have to have something after the colon. So making the pedagogical sausage, for me, comes from West Wing. If you've seen the show West Wing. At one point, they're working on creating a law, and one of them says, well, laws and sausages, no one wants to see how you make them. And so this is kind of the teaching and learning part. It's like making sausage. You've got to figure all these things out. Now I'm going to put you to work throughout the next 45 minutes, give or take. And so I'm going to put you to work starting right now. So I'm going to put up 3 statements. What I want you to do is read each of the 3 statements and decide, do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Or how would you change it to make it more palatable? Okay? Agree, disagree, or how would you change? All right, now, let's see. Can you give me a number from 1 to 3, please?
Number 1 to 3?
Yeah, 1 to 3.
3.
3, let's take a look at number 3. Technology allows teachers to teach more powerfully, more efficiently, and with less effort. How many agreed with that, generally? How many, got some half hands? How many disagreed with that, generally? Same kind of thing. How many people want to change it? All right, well, change it is the way to go. What would you change?
I would just add tons of caveats.
Tons of caveats. Give me one.
Some technologies.
Okay, so modify to say some technologies. Not all of them, but some technologies might do some of these. Okay, so we're going to soften the language. What else would you change or edit? Less effort. So it creates so much less effort, you have more things to do?
No, I'm saying
Okay.
we can change.
Okay, you want to change? Do you want to change it, or you want to just get rid of it?
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it. How many people want to get rid of the less effort part? Yeah, but isn't that how it's sold to us? This is less effort. You put it in this widget dealie, and you hardly have to do anything. You know, go to the Bahamas, teach from there. You know, a little drink with an umbrella in it. But they're sold to us as being less effort. But that's not the case, I'm hearing. Is it more effort to teach with technology? Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Deliberate. Tell me what you mean by that.
I find myself not putting in any more effort than what I normally do in the classroom, but it's deliberate and it's long-lasting, in that I can build structures to have students learn. So it might be less effort a year or two from now.
Okay.
Because I've built it, but right now, it's deliberately me planning and setting things up, just like I would do it in a normal unit, and I just can't rely on what's already been done.
Sure. Okay, so part of technology is you've got to focus on it. It's got to become part of what you do as you build the course. It might pay off down the road where it's less effort. So maybe there's more or equal at the beginning and somewhere down the road. We're going to explore some of this just a little bit. Yes?
I'd also like to add when used appropriately.
When used appropriately. Ah, that's awesome. All right, so we can't just throw technology at things? I've got a MOOC. So, I've got a car. What does that do? You know? So when used appropriately. So technology is neither good nor bad, but using it makes it so. So it depends on how you use technology. This ends up being really important because what I like to say is if your PowerPoint is killing your students' learning, don't blame PowerPoint. Okay? It's how we use the tool, not the tool. Okay, and same thing with MOOCs and e-portfolios, and if we're going to use 3D printing, just because people are printing on 3D does not mean they're doing critical thinking and they're thinking at Einsteinian levels. Okay, they could be creating just a little pawn for their chess set, and isn't that cool? And that's what they're getting out of it. All right. Now, part of what I want to do today is hopefully give you maybe a slightly different perspective, maybe not, but hopefully. And I like videos to introduce sections. So here's a quick video to talk about or to introduce the idea of changing perspectives.
This is the end of publishing and books that are dead and boring. No longer can it be said that we like to read. My friends and I, we don't like the way books feel in our hands. It's not true that I don't follow trends. I know what I want when I see it, and packaging is more important than content. I have to tell you, my attention span is too small for big ideas. And it's just not true that I read a lot and I like learning. I don't care. And you should never think I've got to be concerned with the environment and sustainability. What I really hope you get is you've got to open your eyes to my values. What's important to me is what Lady Gaga is wearing. And I don't really care all that much what Gandhi did last century. I think it's unbelievable that you're actually listening to us. What's important to you is you'll find customers for your product. We think your job's done if we like your brand. We'll do it for you on Facebook, on our mobile, me and my friends. Your market is dying. Don't think that you're going to survive. It is the end of the publishing industry as we know it. Unless you're there, how you see me. It is going to survive. Don't think that it's all dying. Your market is me and my friends. On our mobile, on Facebook, we'll do it for you. If you like your brand, your job's done, you'll think products for your customers. You'll find what's important to you is that you're actually listening to us. I think it's unbelievable what Gandhi did last century. And I don't really care all that much what Lady Gaga is wearing. What's important to me is you've got to open your eyes to my values. What I really hope you get is I've got to be concerned with environment and sustainability. And you should never think I don't care. I read a lot and I like learning. And it's just not true that my attention span is too small for big ideas. I have to tell you, content is more important than packaging. I know what I want when I see it, and I don't follow trends. It's not true that we don't like the way books feel in our hands. My friends and I, we like to read. No longer can we say that books are dead and boring and this is the end of publishing.
All right. So a couple things. First, proof that if you spend enough time searching the web, you find a few jewels here or there. All right. The second thing is I'm glad that they got the whole Gandhi Gaga thing straightened out. You know, I mean, it's important what she's wearing, but really there are other things associated with peace and justice and those things that are important too. What I want to do is put some stakes in the ground relative to learning. And I want to do that because we use the word like we all know what it means and that we all somehow have a shared definition. To me, when we talk about learning, it's like talking about love. We all nod our head as if we are all talking about the same thing, but we could spend the next 45 minutes just talking about what learning is and what it isn't. So I want to put some common language in our heads, and I'm going to start with an activity where I'm going to ask you just to remember a series of words. Okay, a series of words will appear up here, about 4 seconds a word. Your job is just to remember them. Okay, don't write them down, that's not remembering. Okay, so bunch of words. All right, pretty straightforward. Just kind of a little disclaimer here. This room is odd. It's like really wide. It's a football field wide, and it's about 8 feet back, which for a speaker makes it really hard because it's hard to reach you way over there, and it's hard to reach you way back here. And I'm not really a stand on the days kind of person. I like to roam back and forth. So I may be getting off for a minute, but that means if I can't see you all, I'm going to pop back up. But if it looks like I'm moving back and forth a lot, it's because I'm a little uncomfortable trying to figure out where my zone is. I don't want to stand here and talk to you all while I'm missing all of you. So anyway, how many of you started with a strategy? How many started with a strategy to remember? Okay. How many people were just doing brute force, repeating them over and over and over again? Okay. All right. Anybody try to create a sentence out of them? Okay. How about a picture? Okay. All right. How many of you are pretty sure you still have all the words in your head? Okay, so we're O for you, okay? There's 12 words, okay? There's 12 words up there, and with the strategy, you're O for 12, and I'm sure we could work on that if we wanted. As we go through this, normally I would have everybody just write down all the words, but you're kind of sitting, and so I'll just give you a word, and you tell me, is it on the list, okay? So is the word carpet on the list? Okay, how about town? Chair? Grass? Aardvark? Sleep? Tennis ball? Tennis racket? Okay, take a look. So what's the problem? What's not on the list? Sleep, yeah, but you were so confident. Aardvark, no. Sleep, yeah. No. All right. And so, what happened? There's several things that help to explain this, but give me one thing that helps to explain why sleep, yes. Somebody over here, yes.
Because all the words are associated with sleep.
Okay, so all the words are associated with sleep. So would it make sense for sleep to be on the list? Okay. Lynn Reeder at Carnegie Mellon, she calls this intelligent inferencing, which really just means a good guess. Okay, so it would make sense. And you told me you didn't have all the words in your head. Because if you did, what we know from research is you would have just gone down the list until you found it and said, oh, there it is. And we know that from list research because we know the further the word is down the list, the longer it takes you to respond. And so we know what you're doing in your head. In this case, you didn't, so you had to go to plan B, which was would it make sense? What else helps to explain this?
Your pattern was alliterative.
Okay, some sort of alliterative pattern. Something that might give away what the answer is. Okay, and a lot of those exist in our multiple choice questions. Okay, I was asked to work with our vet school once, and they were having problems with their exam. I said, can I take it? And so I took it. Now, I've never been to vet school, but I got about a 75 on it, only because I knew how to take tests. And so I said, well, let's go through your tests and really try to work our way and try to make this sense. What else helps to explain this? I'm going to walk this way. What else? Yes?
If we were using the strategies of pictures or sentences, you're going to insert, you might insert that concept or word into it, or the image into it to explain all of it.
Yeah, so as you were engaging in your strategy, especially if you're doing imagery, you might have put all of these things like in your bedroom or whatnot, and so when sleep came up, you thought of your picture and you went, yeah, that represents sleep, so we're good. So this tells us a number of things about how we learn. The first one is that we learn by constructing knowledge. We are not videotape machines. We're not our iPhones. If we were, you would have known whether sleep was or wasn't. We have to process. We have to do something to remember things. We call it active learning. There's lots of different things. Now, what I did in building this is I didn't give you much time. I gave you 3 to 4 seconds with each word, which is not a lot of processing time. So we've got to process, we've got to work. Our knowledge is inherently organized. Now this one is really important because the words aren't what said sleep was on the list. You said what sleep was on the list. It's the organization in your head, not the words. This is really important. Meaning is an inside-out gig. You decide what things mean. I can present them in some way. I can, as a teacher, can present my understanding. You walk out of class with your understanding. Okay, and so right outside here, there's this big black flat thing, and there's these white straight lines. What are they? Parking space. How do you know it's a parking space? Okay. One of the things I like to do is when I travel internationally is I take pictures of their street signs. Because everybody who's driving, they know what those street signs mean. I haven't a clue. So there was one, it was an outline of a black car and an outline of a red car on a sign. What does that mean? It was an ohm on it, meant no passing. But if I'm driving along, okay, red car's on the left, black car's on the right, I don't know, you know. All right, when the specifics are lost, what's left is the meaning, okay? We end up with the gist of things. Okay, so if I keel over a heart attack, I don't want somebody who's left with the gist of CPR taking care of me, okay? I've seen this on TV, jump on them and do this. All right, I want somebody who remembers the steps to how this works. But as the specifics fade, what we're left with is a general sense, a general gist of things. We can use strategies to process more efficiently. There are ways that chemists think. There are ways that philosophers think. We can teach people to think like this. We can also assess what we know. When I asked, do you remember the words, you had no trouble doing a quick assessment and saying, no, I don't have them, okay? So as we look at this, to summarize this, what we process, we learn. Okay, we talk about active learning, and that's really what I'm talking about, is we've got to process things. When we talk about, well, why aren't my students engaged? Really what they're doing is they're processing. Okay, it looks like they're doing stuff physically, and part of that is they're engaging in multiple ways, because processing isn't singular. We can process cognitively, which is what we tend to focus on in higher ed. We're having them write summaries, we're having them solve problems, we're having them create things. We're engaging with them mostly cognitively, but there's some things we need to do. So if you want your students to know how to work with clients, they have to get out and work with clients. If you want them to know how to work with a 3D printer, they have to actually deal with the software and deal with the printer and those kinds of things. There's things that we learn because we do them. There's things we learn because we socially interact. There's no way to learn how to be a team member without being a team member. I spent a number of years teaching people how to teach K-12 school, and I taught middle school for 7 years. You can't teach somebody how to deal with a bunch of 11-year-olds without having 25 11-year-olds in you. You can't ask 19-year-olds in class to act like they're 11. Middle schoolers are just off the rail. You don't know who's going to come into class that morning. Okay? Same students, very different, Monday to Tuesday, whatever it is. And I found that people either love middle school or they hate it, as far as teaching. If you're okay with that, and I thought it was awesome, because it was just like, every day was a new day, literally. All right, it wasn't, we have the same individual. So some things we have to do socially. We also learn by talking. Okay, one of my truisms is if you can't say it, you don't know it. Because we all think we know more than we do. And when you start with little kids, they really think they know more than they do. But even as adults, there's things that we just have the sense, yeah, I know that. And they say, can you explain that to me? They, not so much. Okay? And so we have to interact socially. And the last one is affectively. This is the one that gathers short shrift. What you care about, what you believe, okay, things that you like, that all influences how you learn and whether you're ready to learn. So if I'm teaching something on sustainability and you think that whole sustainability stuff's just a bunch of crap about people, it's all politics, no way, then you're not going to be open to learning some of these things. At the same time, if you're a pro, then you might be open, but you also might be too open, because we still want you to think critically about these and not just go, oh yeah, it's sustainability, I love all of it. Okay? We need to melt all the ice caps because then we have all this free water. Think about the Floridians. They might not want you to melt all of the ice, okay? So we have to think about who are our students, where are they coming from, what do they value, what are their opinions, okay? What are their attitudes? Because that's going to influence how we deal with the class, okay? How we work that. So we've got a heuristic, kind of a general rule of thumb. What we process, we learn. And so if I'm sitting in watching somebody teach, I'm thinking, well, what are students doing? How are they processing, in a general sense? How are they doing that cognitive, socially, behaviorally, affectively? So we've kind of gone from really general to here. Now that we have some specifics as to how do we think about things as we begin to construct our classes. And the first two, students learn, we learn by retrieving information, not being re-exposed. We've got to pull it forward and we've got to do something with it. The do something with it part needs to vary. We as human beings are very good at learning specific strategies to specific problems. So again, back to middle school. I used to teach single variable equations. 3x plus 9 is equal to 27. Okay? 4x plus 48 is equal to 12. They got all that squared away. And then one day I put something on the board. 39 is equal to 3x plus 6. And their brains explode. We've never done that before. We don't know how to do that. How could you ask us to do that? It's like, well, it's the same thing. You got the equal sign, we just move the x over. Whole different problem. Can't do it. We see things and we try to categorize things as patterns, and then suddenly we shift the pattern. If we want flexible knowledge, we have to experience it in multiple ways. That's why you were so good at what you do. Once you've taught the same course 3 times, you've got a plethora of questions from students. My favorite all start with this. My roommate. And any question that starts with my roommate is going to be great. Okay? My roommate lives on Oreos every day. It's like a nutrition class. What's going on in there? Or my roommate always does this or whatnot. We have extremely flexible knowledge because we have to represent it and re-explain it and answer questions about it. But for our students, they're doing chapter 12. And they're doing it on a Tuesday. And in a lot of our classes, they never return to it. And then we're surprised 2 years later when we said, do you remember when you took that Stat 1 class? And they're looking at you going, no. All right? And it's not surprising because they haven't been retrieving it in different ways to create very flexible language. We know how people learn. The problem is we live in a structure, an educational structure that doesn't foster that. We need to keep going back to information so that they can keep pulling it forward and learn it in different ways. We want to focus on the main principles. Okay, we have 15 weeks for most of us. Here's our 15 weeks. Here's the content. I don't know anyone that after week 9 goes, yep, I'm done. Okay? You've got 47 weeks of content, you've got 15 weeks of stuff, you have time. You've got to figure out what is and what is not principle level. But focus on the principles because that's what you have time for. Some of the details are things that they may or may not get, or you may ask them to do on their own. We also want students to be aware of what they know and to be in control of it. Because oftentimes we're like, well, have you ever had this experience, like on a Thursday, you think back to last week and you ask them a question and they stare at you with that puppy dog look? And you go, well, we just talked about this. I know it's in there somewhere, but they don't have access to it and they don't have control over it. So I worked with a friend of mine in social studies and social science, and we created this really good two-week project for students to learn how to critically analyze historical documents. And we were so happy with it. And they went through the 2 weeks, and then we gave them like a post, here's another item, can you analyze it? And they went back to what they did 2 weeks ago, basically just trial and error. And the reason was completely our fault. We didn't teach them how to recognize what they knew and when to use it. That's part of the flexibility part. So as we teach, it's not just do they have it, can they give it back to us? Can they use it in meaningful ways that they've never seen before because they are now in control of their knowledge? And those are the people who are really good problem solvers because they have access to all of this information that was never originally applied to this problem because their knowledge is flexible. If we want to improve students' performance, we need to focus on developmental feedback. Developmental feedback isn't just knowledge of results. Oh, you got an 87, or you did well. It's how do I get you from where you are to where I need you to be? So I need to think about, well, how are you thinking about this problem? What resources are you bringing to bear? What strategy did you select and why did you select it? Developmental feedback takes a while, which is why it's a challenge. If you've got 100 students, that's really hard. I tend to teach classes of 20, and it's really hard. So if you teach 100, my sympathies. We've got to figure out how much feedback can we give them because that's what's going to move them forward. And then the last part is everything we know and do is based on what we already know and can do. Everything's based on prior knowledge. We as human beings are not good at abstract knowledge floating free. We will take it and we will make it meaningful even if it's in our own idiosyncratic way. So as we think about utilizing technology, as we think about how do we design a class, we have to keep these in mind. We talk about lecture as not being a good approach, and the reason why is it does almost none of these. If I assume I'm just going to give it to you, so I'm talking and I'm doing slides. I'm doing 58 slides in a 50-minute class, and we're just zooming through. No processing. What I'm saying is I'm going to deliver to you content that you then have to figure out how to process on your own. I'm not there to help. That's not teaching. That's presenting. Okay? And so if we want people to present, that's awesome. We can do that. But for teachers, we have to take a certain amount of responsibility of creating an environment that fosters the processing within which students learn. And that's really where it gets to be a challenge. Now, just because students process doesn't mean that they always get it right. Sometimes it's a,
I figure 75% reading wrong, and 25% divided between the 5 books. Either Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the Billy. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If it's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, listen, Mom. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now look. Look here. I'm sure you're going to mess up here. Now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, the 5 won't go into the row. No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times. You see? You're wrong, Billy.
Now, I'm pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25. 5 won't go into 2, but 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so it's only down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Mom. Now, let me do it for you now. My multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
I'm surprised you're running. I'm surprised that you're running. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No, look, Mom. Look, you're wrong there because I'll talk through it for you. And we'll put down 5 14s here. 14, 14, 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 21, 22.
All right, so just because students are processing doesn't mean they're going to come up with the same kinds of things we do. All right, so as a metacognitive strategy of awareness and control, as you go into sessions this afternoon, I want you to think about three things. And the first is really where we've been over the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Where's the processing? So as you're being introduced to a new technology or a new perspective or a new approach or new strategy, where's the processing involved in this? Okay, where are students reaching back, pulling forward, solving problems, focusing on principles, while at the same time learning how to be aware of what they're doing, receiving feedback on their performance, all within their prior knowledge. Now, you don't have to do all 6 of those. Please don't misunderstand that. Some activities just focus on 1 or 2, and that's completely fine. But as you're in sessions, think about, so where are students involved in this? Okay. All right. Now, it might be something like a learning management system, and for the most part, it's structural, and that's okay. But if it's for learning, then students have to be involved. So where's the processing? Now comes the integration part. So how do we integrate what we know about learning, with a little bit of what we talked about as far as memory goes, with how do we design something where we can integrate the learning, the processing, the assessment, the technology. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated. So it's important that if I say something that doesn't make sense, or something that pops up here that doesn't make sense, let me know. Clarity is really important. So here's a quick video about clarity.
Das hier ist ein Mindset-Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Wissensmessers. Das Überlebens.
All right, so yeah, it's important that we can stay focused here. All right, so the whole idea here is how do we integrate the learning and memory part with the design part? And most of this will be repetitive, and so I'm going to kind of move through quickly. But as we take a look at this, and you'll get all these slides, they'll be made available, so don't feel like you have to write all these down. We think about, well, what's the purpose of our course? And to be honest, most of us, with that very part, get it wrong. And what I mean by that is, when I ask my faculty, can you tell me what the purpose of your course is? What I get back is content. I teach this and this and this and this. Your content is never your purpose. The question is, what do you do with your content? What are students doing with it? Okay? Not, they now have learned these 8 things. Okay, so what's beyond that? How do they utilize that in ways that are meaningful, in the ways that they think, behave, act, care? So what is the purpose of your class? I was working with one faculty who was in turf science, and he was working on it, and finally he stops and he goes, my class is about growing better grass. Boom, there it is. Everything then from that point on has to relate to that little piece of it's about growing better grass. I teach a course in constructivism in education. It's a postmodern course about the social nature of knowledge, where we take away this pursuit of universal truths. Instead, we focus on local truths. And so the purpose of my class is to how do we live with uncertain knowledge? Because once you make that shift, nothing is certain anymore. Okay? Now, the goals and the outcomes that we all write for our courses, those are our hopes and our dreams. Those are our expectations for students. At somewhere along the line, we're going to check with our students to see if they've got it, to see if they've learned what we want, if they can think the way they think, or they think the way we want them to think. Those are kind of the bookends at some point. What do we want? What do we hope for? What are our expectations? And what is achieved on the student side? Now, we've just gotten through talking about learning, and so I'm going to turn this back. What did we say was kind of the core piece of how students learn? It's really one word. Processing. Okay, so it's processing. We talked about processing as cognitive, social, behavioral, and affective. Our jobs, we are the creators of environments. We have to create environments within which students process if we are going to take any responsibility for the learning part, and I would say we need to as teachers. We build learning environments that foster cognitive, social, behavioral, and affective processing, where students are pulling things forward in various ways to apply them to different problems, focusing on those principles in ways that allow them to understand what they know, and we give them developmental feedback as they move forward so they learn faster. Okay? Now, when we do this, and we really think about what we're doing, this is where we start to think about, well, how are we going to integrate assessment and technology? Okay? Now, oftentimes what we do is we just slap technology on top. And I did this for years. I would teach a course that had 6 sections, and at the end of each section, I'd have them write a paper, or I'd have them answer questions or whatnot. And to be honest, I didn't think about that as a learning activity. I just thought, at some point I got to give them a grade. It's about the worst reason to assess you can have, because you got to give them a grade. Let's make it something that's learning oriented, that it becomes a part of the class, not something external. So as we throw that out, as we work to integrate assessment, we can shift towards building classes where the class naturally elicits some sort of learning artifact. So in my constructivism class, they have to read before they come to class. Do any of you require reading before they come? Okay. Yeah. How many of you would like to, but you know it's not going to happen? Okay, so one of the challenges, how do we get students to read when they come to class? And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. For me, what I first started doing is I gave them multiple choice questions, and I asked them to write me papers and things like that, but I was focusing on how do I force them to read. Well, I was asking the wrong question. The question was, how do I get them to think about the things they were reading? So I have them write 25-word summaries. You read a 15-page article, and I want you to write me a 25-word summary. Now, if you can't tell me what the purpose of the article was in 25 words, you can't do it in a page, and you can't do it in 5 pages. You're just going to give me more stuff for me to read. So I give them 25 words, and I say, why did the author write this? What's the purpose? What's the takeaway? Don't try to summarize the content. I don't care about the content. I've read it. Tell me, what is the purpose of this? And it focuses them on what's the meaning of what they just read, not did I read it, can I spit it back out? And it shifts the way they read. Okay? That also then, they're doing the 25-word summary for learning purposes. For them to do that, the processing that has to go on, they have to read, they have to critically think about what they're doing, they're taking lots of notes about what's going on from a meaning standpoint, not, oh my gosh, this might be a multiple choice question. How do I integrate it? Then how do I write 25 words? Because every word's got to count. Okay? And they learn how to write much more complex sentences because I give them developmental feedback on what they wrote and how they wrote it. So it might be they have 2 sentences. Sentence 1 talks about idea 1, and sentence 2 talks about idea 2. And I say, well, how can you put those together in a single sentence to represent how those 2 ideas relate to each other? It becomes much more meaningful, and you're going to save words, which means you can then talk about other things. But they're doing the 25-word summary for learning purposes. Now, I can sneak in the dead of night and assess that. Okay? So I sneak into my office when no one's watching, and I pull up the 25 words, and I can then assess the clarity with what they've written. Does it relate to some of the central ideas? Now, they can't capture everything in a 15-page article, and I don't ask them to. I want them to convey to me some central meaning, some principles of the article, not the whole thing. It's the first time they've read it. How many things do you have to read 2 or 3 or 4 times before it really sinks in? Because again, a lot of the things that we're doing, I've read 10 times, and every time I read them, I'm like, okay, I need to, as my focus changes, how I understand that changes. So as we think about the level of learning, in this case, the artifact and the processing that it engenders, how does technology help that? How do we leverage technology in meaningful ways to do that? Can I use technology to do mind mapping, and will that help them? Or are we just creating colorful spider web kinds of things? If we're using 3D printing, are we getting them to think differently about how they construct something? And then they go ahead and they use the technology, and then they reflect on it and what worked and what didn't and how that impacts. Does the item that they're creating help them solve a problem? Because you go online now, and I am an anti-futurist in the sense that I can remember going, the web, who's going to use that, you know? And that was back in like 92 when first Mozilla came out, and I was looking at it. I'm like, oh, little pictures. No, just give me a book. You know, not me. Same thing with 3D printers. Who's going to use that? You know, because 3D printers started off initially doing one thing. And now they're building all sorts of things, and what you have them building with has changed, and it's just amazing. And, you know, so Future is not something I do. I tend to do the present. That's where I live. How can we leverage 3D printing then to get students to process in meaningful ways? Not because it's fun. Ooh, we could use 3D printers. Okay, they can do that on their own, and the motivated students will. How do we leverage technologies in ways that allow them to engage in processing? And technology almost always ends up with some sort of learning artifact that you can then assess. And it's going to be a direct assessment because it comes out of their knowledge, their knowing. Okay, if we're doing something like a survey or questionnaire, that's going to be secondary. We don't want that. If we get some item, it also then allows us to give them that developmental feedback. So if you look at what people do in design classes, they create stuff. And then they're given feedback on that stuff that allows them to create better stuff later. And how much of what we do is about stuff? Now, stuff sometimes is physical stuff, sometimes it's ways of thinking. And that's going to be harder to give feedback, but equally as important. Eventually, some of that goes down to grades, but what we do for a grade isn't the same thing as the developmental feedback we give, which is all about how do we get people to think differently, to perform differently. Okay? So in using this particular model, we can integrate assessment so it all but disappears. I call it assessment for free. So when I'm giving them 25-word summaries, I'm doing it for learning purposes. I also get to assess it, but I don't need to add something to class to assess them. It's already in there. Sure, I could give them multiple choice, but why add on when I've got a direct assessment of what they know already? And so I work from there. How do I leverage technology to foster students' learning? Which means how do I use technology to get students to process? Okay? Now sometimes technology is about reaching out and reaching people in faraway places, and I get that. That's for a different purpose. Sometimes it's a management system and it's more about organization. But when we take a look, for instance, at e-portfolios, which we're going to talk about in a minute, they started off learning and went to strategies, went to structure, and then came back finally to learning. All right. This is kind of a bonus slide. I didn't exactly know where it went, and I just thought, well, let's talk about motivation for just a second. We're talking about processing, and processing is active. The students don't always want to be active, and so how do we motivate them? So here's 7 quick approaches to fostering internal motivation. Students are often motivated by choice, given different ways. So what do you want to focus on? How do you want to do it? How are you going to represent it? Giving them choices, not everybody has to do exactly the same way, it's the same thing in the same way. How can they focus on things they care about or have an interest in? And how can they be in control of their success and failure? So if I came to your class, I want to know day one how all the grading is laid out so I can not worry about that. I'm now in control of what I do and what I don't do. Then where are my choices? How do I get to explore these ideas in ways that are meaningful to me? Challenge. Some students are motivated by challenge. So when you say, nobody really gets this part, so don't worry if that doesn't make sense, they're up all night long. They're researching on the web. They come in, they've got a big model done. I created a video last night to show you that I understand this because you said it was hard. I got it. All right, so some are motivated by that. Some by collaboration. Now, this was what cracks me up. How many people here love working in groups? How many people really don't love working in groups? To me, as professors, as teachers, we are often the independent-minded. We want to get in and dig, and so we work in groups because we know we need to and that there's a benefit to it, not necessarily because we want to. Right? But we have lots of students that love to be in groups. Okay? Competence. People are motivated by demonstrating what they know and what they can do. Okay, give them an opportunity to do that. And finally, to pursue their curiosities. So these all lead to students engaging more mindfully and more appropriately in our classes. So now, a quick strategy, and then we're gonna finish up with some questions. And we've really started to already talk about this. In my class where they do these 25-word summaries, the class has 7 sections, and the middle 5 are really the heavy content parts. At the end of each one of those, where I used to give them a test and then I used to give them a paper, now I have them do an oral explanation. And I had this because a lot of these are master students. Now I do this with my undergrads too, but a lot of these are masters, and I'd be in their master exam and somebody say, oh, you took constructivism, tell us about radical constructivism. And I would listen, and I would think, who the heck was your teacher? Oh my gosh. Well, it was me. So after a couple years of going, oh my God, these are horrible answers, I began to realize there was something wrong with the class. And I was asking them to do the wrong things. Students are pretty good about pulling together resources and writing a 5-page paper and then forgetting everything that's in it. But by asking them an oral explanation where you have to explain it to me, what an oral explanation is create for me a 10 to 15 minute video that focuses primarily on things that occurred within that particular content area, and then apply it to your life because I want it to be personal. Now, everybody has access, for the most part, everybody has access to video on their phone, on their computers, they come to campus, and I tell them, I don't care about the quality of the video. I want no post-processing. I don't want hearts coming up from the bottom, I don't want title slides, I don't want any of that. Just do it. And if halfway through your cat walks across the screen, don't stop, just introduce me. Hey, this is Muffins. Oh, hey, how's it going? Or, your partner comes home, that's completely fine too. It doesn't matter to me. I just want you to talk to me because that was really my goal all along. I just didn't know it. So since my goal isn't to have them write about it, I want them to talk about it, I created a learning activity where they had to, in fact, do that I could later also score. So in order for them to do that, when you think about, well, okay, so, we've been talking about this processing, where's the processing? Well, they have to analyze and interpret things we've talked about, things that they've read. They have to organize it and apply it to their life. And finally, they have to create this video. That's a lot of processing. And they tell me, even though I tell them they don't have to, that it takes them 6 or 7 times to get what they want. And I'm okay with that. But it's a whole different level of processing leading to different kinds of learning than if I just said, write me a paper. Okay? And I can sneak in, I can assess it. I've got a little scoring guide let me back up. I've got a scoring guide I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to show you a video very quick because we're kind of short on time. It's only about 3 minutes, but I'm going to only show you half of that. So this is an example of one from one of my doc students, but the masters and the undergrad look pretty much the same.
Oral explanation number 2. And for a few weeks we've been talking about how students learn. And it's creating on the fact that it's not enough to know the subject matter, but you also have to have some knowledge of how humans learn and how the human brain processes information. So what we've been, what we've been talking about basically breaks down into 2 different things. First is the big picture equation, or what I've been calling the big picture equation, and that's these guys.
Now the interesting thing is they almost all do some sort of visual. Some do it in front of a whiteboard. She's holding up pages. I had one person who had a Chewbacca figurine and a starfighter or something, and how they couldn't understand each other. And you can't assign that. Get the action figures of choice and explain to constructivism using them. Oral explanation. I've got a scoring guide. You get to create one of your own. Mine has both structure. It needs to be 25 words or less, and you don't get points for being or less. Because if you give me 20 words, I'm like, you had 5 words left over. Use them. Okay, figure out a way to convey something. Content, explanation, and application to your life. So there are ways of sorting this out. When we take a look at our 6 principles, it covers them all. Now, it doesn't have to. This one just happens to. And they're doing this because it gets them to learn, not because I need an assessment. I do assess it, but that's not the reason why this was created. And then something happened. PowerPoint, the obvious. The PowerPoint has encountered a problem and needs to close. Sorry. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's open that back up. All right. You have to make noise. There we go. So in our strategy, where's the processing, and then where's the design? How does this fit into our class? Because it could be really good, and you see lots of processing, but if it doesn't work in your class, then it's just not going to work. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about technology. And in technology, we were talking before, technology is neither good nor bad, but using it makes it so. We need a video to demonstrate that.
Again, this is the USS Montana requesting that you immediately divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision.
This is Captain Randolph. You will be your course. Over. So, this is the USS Montana, the second largest vessel in the North Atlantic Fleet. You will change course 15 degrees north. All these courses in the morning to ensure the safety of this ship. Over. This is the lighthouse station. Your call.
All right. So when we're using technology, there's lots of things that can get in our way. We have to kind of be aware of that. Let's see. I've got about 5 minutes, and we have lunch next, yes? Can I steal a couple of minutes into lunch? Yes? Oh, you have what? Okay. All right. So I'll work on being done in 6 minutes. All right. So here we go. That was a very nice way of saying no. All right. When we take a look at technology, technology can be, we can have technological determinism or social determinism. Technological determinism means basically technology rules. We do what it kind of tells us to. The social means we have some control over how we use technology. Now, there are those who are technological optimists. Technology is always awesome. If you're not teaching with technology, you're just not teaching. The other side are the more conventionally side, which is techno-pessimism, which is this whole idea that technologies run amok. We're not thinking as much, we're not concentrating as much. There's lots of books that'll tell us how bad technology is, and there's a lot of books that'll tell us how awesome technology is. So you get your pick. Just go to Amazon, and they're all there. Now, for me, it's all about the social construction of technology. It's up to us to decide. Technology is neither good nor bad, but using it makes it so. Which means we, and by we I mean you, we have a responsibility for how we use technology. Are we going to use it for good or not? And so how are we using technology? Are we using it for good processing? Now, Gartner, and this is a company, they came up with this hype cycle business. And they said when technologies land within our culture, they're often overhyped. Okay? And almost every technology gets overhyped. Gamification's overhyped, or was overhyped. Same thing with MOOCs, same thing with e-portfolios, things like that. So let me take e-portfolio as an example. In 2002, it kind of landed in the social consciousness of education. But by 2009, we were basically hearing things like, we need to start students when they're in kindergarten with their own e-portfolio for the rest of their lives. And schools were shifting to giving first-year students e-portfolios so they could follow along for 4 years. Most of that has gone by the wayside because we have entered the trough of disillusionment, when we suddenly realize that e-portfolios are not going to be the end. Now, this doesn't mean there's anything wrong with e-portfolios. It just means they're not going to be the tool we thought they were. So then we've worked since 2011 to figure out, so how do we use them in meaningful ways? So again, don't think I'm anti-technology. I love technology. But we tend to overhype them. But we don't have to. We have a room full of really smart people here. How can we short-circuit this? How can we step back and go, you know, everybody keeps talking about this gamification thing. Do we need to gamify everything? Is that really what this is all about? Everybody get points for everything? Everybody gets some sort of reward for everything? It doesn't have to be that way. But we have this hype part on the left, and we have a support part on the right. And what we want to do is avoid the hype if we can. Okay, now one of the things I kept thinking to myself, how do we see this? And I thought, well, let's look at Google Trends. Google Trends just tracks search patterns. And so this is ePortfolio, and that hump is at 2009. So in 2009, there were more people searching for ePortfolios, and that has dwindled. And I thought, well, if that is in fact that part of the hype cycle, does research occur later on? So I had some grad students take a look at this to see, does in fact research follow the hype? And in fact, this is the graph of research. So hype occurs first, research appears second, which means if we are social constructionists, we have to believe that we have to pause because we don't really know how to use these technologies yet. And this happened with MOOCs. Man, MOOCs were way overhyped. 2012 was the year of the MOOC and now so good. 2013 was the year of the MOOC. 2014 was the year of the crash. And now MOOCs aren't nearly as big, but we're starting to figure out how do we use them in interesting ways. So this is ePortfolios. This is what the hype was about 2009. This is MOOC. Hype was in 2013 and 14. Code Academy, which is kind of a substitute for coding, about 2015. Makerspace, we haven't hit the hype total yet. And this is the flipped classroom. Right? Flipped classroom is weird because it's kind of plateaued at the top. And all flipping is really good from a processing standpoint. All flipping says is we can process before class, during class, and after class. We take the content, we give it to them, give them something to do before they come to class. In my class, they read. So they read here, or they do something, and they can do this with technology. That's the initial processing. In class, they can do something deeper. And after class, they can do something as well. That's all flipping is. And when it was hyped 4 years ago, it was all about the video. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with video if you don't want it. But it's not magic. Just because you do it doesn't mean it's going to happen. So it really summarizes where we've been. We've got to focus on the processing that we're doing. We have to focus on how are we getting students practice at retrieval in varying tasks, getting them to leverage at the principal level so they're in control of their knowledge, ultimately so we can give them some developmental feedback. While all of that's going on, how do we build a course that has these as their outcomes? And how do we end up motivating them in ways that make sense? Okay. So last slide and then I'm done. So if it felt like that was fast, that was. Here we go. All right. We've been doing videos all along, so we need a video to kind of sum up some of these things. Oh, sorry. The last thing is, in this strategy, how are students processing? Does it fit our design? And is there research to support it? And sometimes this research is personal. It's what happens in our class.
In case you hadn't realized, it has somehow become uncool to sound like you know what you're talking about. Or believe strongly in what you're, saying. Invisible question marks and parenthetical you know, and you know what I'm saying, have been attaching themselves to the ends of our sentences, even when those sentences aren't, questions. Declarative sentences, so-called because they used to declare things to be true, okay? As opposed to other things that are totally, not. They've been infected by this tragically cruel and totally hip interrogative tone. As if I'm saying, don't think I'm a nerd just because I've noticed this, okay? I have nothing personally invested in my own opinions. I'm just inviting you to join me on the bandwagon of my own uncertainty. What has happened to our conviction? Where are the millions out on which we once walked? Have they been chopped down with the rest of the rainforest? Or do we have nothing to say? As society has become so filled with these conflicting feelings of that we've just gotten to the point where we're the most aggressively inarticulate generation to come along since, a long time ago. So I implore you, I entreat you, and I challenge you to speak with conviction, to say what you believe in a manner that disputes the determination with which you believe it. Because contrary to the wisdom of the bumper sticker, it is not enough these days to simply question authority. You got to speak with it, too.
All right, that's it. Thanks for coming.